Hey guys, in this video, I'm going to walk you through the step-by-step process on how to fill out Form W-4, Employees Withholding Certificate. And I took this PDF right off of the IRS website. I'll link it down in the description so you can quickly access this PDF for yourself. Now, everyone is going to have to fill out Step 1 as well as Step 5, and it's only a 5-step process, and a number of you guys are only going to have to fill out, like I said, Step 1 and 5. Steps 2, 3, and 4 are just going to depend on your situation. In step number 2, you're only going to have to go through this if you have multiple jobs or 2 spouses that work, for instance. And step number 3 is only going to be if you have dependents to claim. And then step number 4 is going to be optional other adjustments. And again, I'm going to be going through all of these and touching on the differences depending on what type of situation you might find yourself in. But step number 1, everyone's going to have to fill this out. The example I'm using in this video, I put the specifications down in the bottom left-hand corner. It's going to be one of the more complex situations because I wanted to do an example that fills out all of these different boxes. But again, some of you guys are only going to have to fill out box 1 and 5. But like I said, this slightly more complex example that I'm going to be doing here is married filing jointly, and both spouses are bringing in an income. There's 2 qualifying children under the age of 17, and one spouse has a $100,000 income, the other spouse has a $50,000 income, and I'm going to be filling this out as if I were the spouse that had the $100,000 income, because that's going to be the individual that has to fill out these additional steps, whereas the $50,000 income is going to be able to skip over these steps and just go down to step number 5. Some other examples of being able to skip from step 1 down to step 5 is if you had multiple jobs and you're filling out a W-4 for the additional jobs that have lower income, you'd only be having to do it for the W-4 for the highest income job. But also if there's only a 1-job situation and you weren't claiming dependents and you weren't doing other adjustments, so you just take the standard deduction and you're not putting in other income, then you could also skip from step 1 down to step 5. So everyone's going to have to fill out step number 1. It's going to be your first name and middle initial, your last name, your social security number, and then your address, including your city, state, and zip code. And then in area C of step 1, you're going to check whether you're single or married filing separately. This isn't going to be for the example that I'm doing here. I'm doing a married filing jointly, and this would also be if you're a qualifying widower. And the third box that you can check is head of household. So check this only if you're unmarried and pay more than half of the cost of keeping up a home for yourself and a qualifying individual. That would be the case where you would check the head of household box. So only complete steps 2 through 4 if they apply to you. Otherwise, skip over to step 5. And I touched on that before. So step number 2, only complete this if you hold more than 1 job at a time, are married filing jointly, and your spouse also works. The correct amount of withholding depends on the income earned from all of these jobs. So we're going to do only one of the following. And I want to make this extra clear before going through and filling out this worksheet. This is going to be just for the highest earning income job. All the other jobs that you fill out a W-4, you don't need to do these additional steps for. Completing steps 3 through 4B on the W-4 for only one of these jobs. Leave these steps blank for your other jobs. Your withholding will be most accurate if you complete steps 3 through 4B on the W-4 for the highest paying job. I just wanted to critically emphasize that because I don't want you guys out there filling out all of these additional steps for the jobs that are lower income that you don't need to do this extra work for. Now for this spouse that I'm filling this out for that has the highest income of the $100,000, then they're going to be doing only one of the following, either A, B, or C. Option A is using the estimator over at irs.gov/W4 app. And I'll link this webpage down in the video description if you want to fill things out over at the estimator. And I also want to note that you should definitely consider using the irs.gov/W4/app, that estimator over there, if you expect to work only part of the year, have dividend or capital gain income, or are subject to additional taxes such as additional Medicare tax, have self-employment income, prefer the most accurate withholding for multiple job situations, or even if you're in a situation where there's more than 3 jobs, so 4 jobs or more, then I would also highly recommend using that estimator over at the irs.gov webpage that I'll link down in the description. Option B is using the multiple jobs worksheet on page 3 of this form and entering that result into step 4, area C below for a roughly accurate withholding. Now you can do A or B. It really isn't that big of a difference. The estimation on A is going to be a little bit more accurate, but we're not talking about a drastically different number. And then option C isn't going to apply to as many situations, but if there are only 2 jobs in total, and these are jobs that have a similar amount of pay, then you can check this box, and then you wouldn't have to fill out the worksheet to get a result to enter into step 4C, and you'd have to check this box as well in step 2C on the other W-4 as well for the other job. But since the example that I'm doing is a situation where one job is $100,000, the other job is $50,000, I'm not going to be checking this box. Instead, I'm going to be opting in for option B. So now I'm down here on page number 3 of this worksheet, and it says if you chose the option in step 2B on the W-4, then complete this worksheet. And this is going to calculate the total extra tax for all jobs. And that's why you don't want to fill this out on all of your different jobs. You just want to do it on the one that has the highest income. And that's very important to emphasize here, that you're only doing this on one of the Form W-4s. You're not going to be doing it for those additional jobs that have a lower income. And again, withholding will be most accurate if you complete the worksheet and enter the results on the Form W-4 for the highest paying job. So you're either going to do step 1 in this worksheet for 2 jobs, or you're going to do step 2 if there are 3 jobs. So for my example, there's 2 jobs. If you have 2 jobs or you're married filing jointly and you and your spouse each have 1 job, find the amount from the appropriate table on page 4 using the higher paying job row and the lower paying job column. Find the value at the intersection of the 2 household salaries and enter that value on line 1, then skip to line 3. So going down to page 4, and this is going to be the table that's married filing jointly. And for the higher paying job, we're going to go down here and find the 100,000 area. And the lower paying job is going to be this 50,000 area. So we go down and find this intersection, which is going to be 9,320. That's the intersecting cell that we get from the 100,000 area and the 50,000. And this is just going to depend on the 2 different incomes that you're expecting. Let's say one job was at 60,000 and the other one was at 20. Then you would go over from the highest paying job, which would be 60, over to the 20, and you'd get 3,080. Again, it's just going to depend on the different salaries that you have. For me, it's 9,320. So I'm going to take that number and enter it into this first area. And again, my example isn't 3 jobs, so I don't have to do step 2. If you were an example where you're doing 3 jobs, then you would complete lines 2A, 2B, and 2C below. And to just quickly run over what you'd be doing if there is a 3-job scenario that you find yourself in, what you would do is you would go down to that table below on page 4, and you would take the highest paying job, and that would be from the higher paying job row. And then the second highest paying job you would put in the lower paying job column, and you would find that intersection of the 2 households. So it would be just like what we did in step number 1, but instead it would be for the 2 highest paying jobs, finding that intersection and then writing that number here. And then after filling in that 2A cell, what you would do in 2B is add up the 2 highest wages together and use that for the higher paying job row. And then the third job would be used for the lower paying job column. You would find where that intersects and you would enter that amount in 2B. And then you would add the amounts from 2A and 2B and enter that result into 2C. So a little bit more complex if there's 3 jobs, but still pretty straightforward if you follow that process. So now for me in this example, I go down to step number 3, enter the number of pay periods per year for the highest paying job. For example, if that job pays weekly, enter 52. If it pays every other week, enter 26. If it pays monthly, enter 12. So for me in my example, for the $100,000 income, it's going to be paid every other week. So I'm going to enter in at 26. And then step number 4, divide the annual amount on line 1 or line 2C, depending on which one that you filled in above, by the number of pay periods on line 3. And then we're going to enter this amount here and in step 4C of the W-4 for the highest paying job. So I'm going to add a calculator over here to the left-hand side of the screen. So we're going to do 9320 divided by 26. And then I'm just going to round up and say that this is going to be 359. And now I'm going to take this 359 and I'm going to go back up to our W-4 and I'm going to enter it in to step 4C. And now we're good to go with that area. So now after filling that out, we have completed step number 2. So now moving down to step number 3, which is going to apply in the example that I'm doing, claiming dependents. And this is going to be for individuals that have an income of $200,000 or less, or if they're married filing jointly and have a joint income of $400,000 or less, then this step 3 is going to apply to them if they have dependents. So multiply the number of qualifying children under the age of 17 by 2,000. So for me, I have 2,000 times 2, pretty easy arithmetic there. We're going to put 4,000 into this area. And then if you have other dependents, these are going to be 500 each, and you can multiply that. So for me, it's 0 other dependents. 0 times 500 is going to be 0. And then add the amounts above and enter the total here. So 4,000 plus 0, pretty easy arithmetic there. We're going to be at 4,000. And now moving on to step number 4. So step 4A is going to be other income not from jobs. So if you want tax withheld for other income you expect this year that won't have withholding, enter that amount from the other income here. This could be things like interest, dividends, retirement income. So if you have anything that applies, you can enter that amount of income right in this line here in 4A. But for me, in my example, I'm not expecting other income not from jobs, so I'm just going to put 0 in for that area. And then 4B is going to be for deductions. If you expect to claim deductions other than the standard deduction and want to reduce your withholding, you can use the deduction worksheet on page 3 and enter the result here. So down here on step 4B, enter an estimate of your 2021 or whatever tax year it is for the itemized deductions, such as deductions that may include qualifying mortgage home interest, charitable contributions, state and local taxes up to $10,000, and medical expenses in excess of 7.5% of your income. So let's just say in this example that this married filing jointly couple is going to have $15,000 worth of deductions that would apply to the following things. So I would enter in 15,000 in this area. And then in line number 2, you're going to enter in whichever number applies to your situation. So 25,100 if you're married filing jointly. So that would be the situation here, 25,100. And then this number would be 18,800 if you're head of household, 12,550 if you're single or married filing separately. And then in line number 3, it says if line 1 is greater than line 2, then subtract line 2 from line 1 and enter that result here. If line 2 is greater, then enter 0. So for me, line 2 is greater, so I would enter in 0. And then line number 4, it says enter an estimate of your student loan interest, deductible IRA contribution, and certain other adjustments. And you can see these from part 2 of Schedule 1, Form 1040. But for this couple in this example, we're going to say that there is 0 from these additional areas. But in your instance, you might have some of these that would apply to you, and then you could enter that into this area. Then it says add lines 3 and 4 and enter the result here and in step 4B on Form W4, where you're adding 0 and 0. But this is going to be a different number if your itemized deductions are higher than the standard deduction, as well as if you have these additional deductions that you'd want to put in. Then this number could certainly be higher than 0. But I'm going to take this number and I'm going to put it up into our W4 worksheet into that 4B area, enter in 0. And now we're done completing the more complicated steps of the W4, steps 2, 3, as well as 4. So now we're going to go down to step 5, which is mandatory for everyone to fill out. And that's where you're going to have to write in your employee signature as well as the date. And then this bottom area is going to be for your employer only, your employer's name and address, the first date of employment, and the employment identification number. Again, your employer is going to be filling in these areas. And that's going to finish this one off. So again, guys, if you want to check out this W4 worksheet, I'll post a link down in the description. And if you want to fill out the estimator, you can also do that over at irs.gov/W4 app. And I'll also put this website linked down in the description if you'd like to check that out. Thanks for stopping by. Consider subscribing, and I'll catch you back here next time.